everyone, and welcome to a new video. Today's video is going to be a pretty casual vlog style video of me making the dress that I'm currently wearing. This is a really cute, or at least I think it's really cute, 1950s inspired summer dress. It is fitted with 6 darts on the front and 2 darts on the back, down to a waistband, and then it closes at the side. So I think it's a really cute dress. It's a really comfortable dress. It's one that I'm really happy to have in my wardrobe, and it is one that I made last week and actually filmed the process of making. And now I'm sharing all of that footage with all of you. But if you are new to my vlogs, then just a heads up that these videos are not super sewing focused. These are not tutorials or instructional in nature. It's just about my process while making a dress. So please keep that in mind. As for my inspiration behind this dress, it was kind of inspired by the Ikea dress that I made a few years back, but I wanted to correct some of the issues I had with that dress and also make one in a washable material that fit me better, that was more appropriate for everyday wear. And I think I've managed to do that pretty well. Since I'm not sure if this clip got erased, the main fabric that I used for this dress is a silk cotton shirting, which I purchased from Fabric Mart. It is the most beautiful fabric, and it has a really soft yellow and white striped print to it. I just absolutely adore it. The material is great. I think the fit is pretty great. The style is really great, and I just really love this dress. So I hope you guys love it too and love seeing the process of me attempting to make it. And I shall talk to all of you at the very end. So today I'm just making a simple 1950s summer dress. If you guys have been around for a while, you might remember an Ikea curtain dress I made. It was very simple. It had a rectangle skirt and then a bodice that was fitted with darts. I think that dress just had 1 dart at the front, and then the arm openings and the neckline were bound with bias binding, which continued over the shoulders and tied in a bow at the top of the shoulder. And that was such a cute design. I didn't end up wearing that dress ever since I did not pre-wash the material, and I had some problems with the straps coming undone, like the stitching that I used for them, and I also didn't sew the zipper in particularly well. So even though that dress was cute at a glance, it was not very practical, and I didn't really invest enough time into it to make it practical, even though the techniques in general that I used could lead to having a really solid wearable dress. I really liked the neckline of that dress and the closure method at the shoulders. I thought it was really cute, and I've been wanting to make something like that, but actually something I can put in my wardrobe for quite a while now. So I drafted the pattern today in one of my bouts of attempting to be productive, and I also made a mock-up, and the mock-up fit pretty well, so I think I can go ahead and dive right into this. As I said, the bodice design is going to be really pretty simple. It will close on one side with a placket and some white buttons. And I actually have a little bit of trim that I want to use around the top edge of this dress that I will get out and show you in just a minute. Instead of just having a straight edge overlap and have the buttons on that, I thought maybe I could do little triangles that overlap with the buttons in the middle. I just feel like that'd be a really cute, fun detail on a relatively simple dress. I figured out that I'd need 9 of these little triangles to create the closures for the side of the bodice. So there are going to be 4.5 that are actually part of the bodice, and then the other 4.5 are going to be part of the skirt, just to allow the side to open enough I can easily get the dress on and off. And the way this is going to work is that they're going to fold on this line, and then I'm going to sew up this side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to turn it right side out, and that will nicely finish at least most of the edges. I've also decided, since the silk cotton shirting is a little bit thin, that I'm going to put a layer of this muslin in between them. This is called muslin, but it actually feels like a lightweight canvas. It's very thick. So I've cut out 2 pieces that will be large enough for me to cut the 10 pieces that I need out of. And I'm just going to go ahead and iron these so they're nice and smooth before I cut everything out. My good sewing shears have disappeared, so I have to do this with my tiny little dinky scissors. I ended up making 4 pieces of 2-inch wide bias binding that will form the straps, as well as the belt loops, which I think I'm going to add. And then I did 4 strips of 1.5-inch wide binding, which is going to bias bind the edges. And the reason that I'm doing the straps differently than I did on the Ikea dress way back when is because the problems I had with that is that the top stitching would break when the ties were tied, and then the bias binding would become undone. And the bias binding also just made kind of thicker straps than I really wanted. And not thicker in terms of width, just thicker in terms of it was a lot of layers of material. So I think sewing the straps as little tubes is going to look a little bit nicer. So that is the strap ties done. I just went ahead and folded the 2-inch bias cut strips in half, and I sewed 3/8 of an inch away from the fold, and I trimmed off any excess seam allowance, and then I used a needle and some ribbon to turn it the right way out. In a previous video, someone, well actually someone commented saying that they use safety pins to turn things out or to feed elastic or ribbon through channels. And the reason I don't do that is because I've had several experiences where the safety pin has opened while I've been in the process of doing that, and I've actually had to remove stitches just to get the safety pin out of the garment, because once the safety pin is open, trying to get it closed without catching any of the threads from the interior of the garment is pretty much impossible. So that's why I don't use them anymore. I prefer using ribbon to feed it through the channel with a relatively blunt large needle. So that's what I did for this, and as you can see now I have all of this pretty cording which will serve as ties for the shoulder. I also got the bodice cut out, so I'm going to go ahead and mark the darts on this and then get those sewn. And I attempted to cut out the base layer for the diamonds, which I'm going to fold into triangles and use for the placket, but they didn't turn out that evenly, so I think I'm going to recut these. So I'll try and film the process of that this time around. So I've kind of hit a roadblock tonight. I went ahead and sewed all of the triangles, but the canvas ended up being too thick to turn them out and maintain the point, even though I trimmed away all the excess material from the point. And then with my bodice over here, it looks like the marking pen I used, though it didn't stain, it transferred ink from the pattern onto the fabric which stained. So now I'm going to have to add a waistband to this dress just to cover that up. The lower 3/4 of an inch will be covered or hidden in seam allowance, but there's still going to be this sticking up by a 1/2 inch. And I don't have enough material to recut this, and I don't want to risk using a stain remover on this relatively delicate material. Also, all of these pieces are now soaked since I had to use water to remove the washable ink. It is currently around 9 o'clock. I think today is just a wash. I feel like I need a break, even if it's just for tonight. So that's it for me for now. So it is the next morning, and I'm feeling slightly more cheerful about this project. I'm definitely feeling determined to get it finished and to make it really cute. So far, I've gone ahead and recut out the little triangles that will go on the placket, and I've sewn them into triangles, and then I marked the buttonhole placement. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these. Also just pinned together the 2 layers of material that will make up the bodice. There are still little pen markings on these, which I'm so annoyed about, but they're not very noticeable, especially near the top, and I'm going to cover the ones near the bottom with a waistband. So right now I'm focusing on making the placket just because it's the most fiddly part. Progress on the bodice should come along pretty quickly this morning, or at least I hope it will. Since all of my little triangles are done, I'm currently at the Singer Heavy Duty, and I'm just going to go ahead and sew some buttonholes. I know in a previous video, or in a couple videos, I've been asked how I do the buttonholes, and this specific machine, I can't remember the number, the mid-end model of the Singer Heavy Duty does automatic buttonholes. What you do is you have the buttonhole foot, and then there's this little space in the back, and you put your button in there and you adjust it to the size, and it makes buttonholes in the perfect size to accommodate that. Last night I mentioned that I was going to need 9 of these little triangles to do the placket, but I actually only have 8 buttons, so I guess I'm only going to use 8 of these little triangles and the skirt won't open up as deeply, but that should be fine. My buttonholes are all done. I went over each buttonhole with thread twice because I find that makes a denser, more durable buttonhole. And then I went ahead and saturated the buttonholes with water to remove the water-soluble marking pen. And now I just have to wait for these to dry before I can cut them open and fray check them and then actually sew them into the bodice. So in the meantime, get it? Like sew in the meantime? I think I'm funny. I'm going to go ahead and sew up the side seam for this, at least one of the side seams, because the other one's going to be left open for closures. Then I can stitch the binding onto the arm side, the binding around the neckline, and attach the ties, and also attach that trim that I mentioned earlier but still haven't shown you. So that's what I'm going to be up to for the next little bit. I still have my bias binding over here from when I made it last night, and then the ties that I showed you last night are on my table surface. So I'm going to get to sewing and get to getting this thing together. So the bias binding around the arm openings is completely done. I think it turned out very cute. I sewed it on with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I turned it inward and I turned the raw edge inward, so it's nice and pretty from both the interior and the exterior. And I hand stitched this side down to the lining because that seems to be most common in pattern instructions from 1950s. So I thought I would implement that in my homemade dress, even though I didn't use a original pattern for it. And now it is time to do the binding up there and to sew the straps on, and also sew on the pretty trim that I'm going to use. And to find that pretty trim, we have to go into the random ribbon and trim and lace box. So this is the trim that I'm going to use. I actually purchased this for an 18th century costume, which isn't going to be particularly historically accurate, but I bought like 30 yards of it because it was actually cheaper to buy the bolt of it than to purchase 10 yards of it. So I thought it would look really cute if I put a little bit of this around the neckline. It'll just add a bit of detail to an otherwise simple dress, and I'm just kind of itching to use this trim in general because I think it's really, really cute. So I'm just going to cut off a length that is long enough, and I think I'm going to put it on the back too, just because why not? So I'm probably going to do this part off camera since you just saw me sew the binding on around the arm openings, and this is just the same process repeated once again. But I'm going to sew the remaining binding around this edge, and I'm going to turn the edges on either side inward so I will get a nice finished point. And then I'm just going to top stitch my strap binding on. And as I think I said earlier in this video, I chose to make these straps as tubes with all the raw edges tucked inside, whereas when I first made a dress like this, I just carried the bias binding up and then I top stitched the folded edges together. And that led to a bulky strap, which made it hard to tie into cute little bows. And it also made the straps kind of uncomfortable over my shoulders since there was such a large knot there. So I'm hoping doing the tubes where there's fewer layers of material will be a lot softer and look better and actually feel better when I'm wearing it. I ended up cutting the bias tubes into 4 pieces that are in equal length, and then I knotted one end and I trimmed off the excess below the knot. So these are going to form the straps and they will attach to these points. Also, the little triangles with buttonholes have finally dried from the bath they had to be given this morning. So I'm going to iron these and then cut open the buttonholes and add a little bit of fray check to keep them nice and sturdy. So I just pinned it to my dress form so I could take some photos for Instagram, and I'm going to ask people whether they like it better with or without trim. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the skirt. And my options for this are a little bit limited because these stripes run from selvage to selvage instead of across the length of the fabric, which is kind of weird. So that means that I can only cut the skirt to be as wide as the length of material that I have left. Whereas usually I would cut the skirt as several panels, probably 3 panels, and stitch them together. But then the stripes will be going horizontally across the skirt, and I really want them going vertically since that's what I did for the bodice. So I'm going to cut that out and do a hem for it. I'm probably going to just hem it by machine, in which case I have to make a couple new bobbins. And then I will get the top gathered down and I can get it all sewn together. So I went ahead and cut the skirt out, and I cut it to be 34 inches long, and I think it's about 3.5 yards wide. I had more fabric left than I thought I did, which is great. So after cutting it to that length using pinking shears, I turned the bottom edge inward using my iron by about 5/8 of an inch. And then I turned the bottom edge inward by 5 inches. And I didn't want to mark the fabric for this since I had some issues with my water-soluble marking pen earlier, and a pencil line is going to show through this fabric. So I just cut out a piece of sketchbook paper that is 5 inches wide, and I was using this as a guide just to make sure that the hem was the right length all the way along. Usually I would hem the skirt at this point, just stitch along this edge by machine, but the back seam of this is going to fall at the side instead of the waist, and I would like the hem to look continuous. So I'd like to sew up the side seam before I sew the hem, and I don't want to sew the side seam until I have the skirt attached to the bodice. So I think I'm going to go ahead and gather the top edge down and get it sewn onto the bodice, and then I will do up the side seam and do the placket and do the hem and all of that. And I'm actually going to gather the top edge of this down by hand. I'm kind of in the mood for it and I think it gives more even gathers. And for a dress that I'm planning on wearing dozens of times, I'd really like to take that extra couple of minutes and do it perfectly and do it by hand. So I got the top edge gathered down, and I also ended up repinning the hem because when I tried this on, or at least held it up, the skirt was shorter than I wanted it to be. So I changed it to be a 4 2/4 inch hem as opposed to the 5-inch hem that I'd originally gone for. So I'll try it on again and make sure that I like that before stitching it down, but I feel like that is a much better length. And now that the top edge is gathered, I'm going to go ahead and baste it to the bodice and then get that machine sewn together. I covered the raw edge with some twill tape and I top stitched it to the bodice. And then I covered up that top stitching as well as those marks at the base of the darts with a waistband. So this is a 2 1/4 inch wide strip that was cut on the horizontal grain line of the material. And I turned the edges inward by 1/2 inch. I also went ahead and sewed all of those little button placket triangles onto a piece of twill tape, and then I covered that with a piece of satin ribbon since I accidentally sewed it onto the wrong side and didn't want the raw edges to be visible. So that's all done and ready to be top stitched and then whip stitched into position, and then I can sew the buttons on and do up the side seam and sew the hem, and this dress will be finished, hopefully before the day is done. So I marked the button placement, and now I'm going to go ahead and sew them all on. I'm not actually sure where they ended up going, but I'm going to find them. I'm going to hunt them down, and then they will all get sewn on. So I don't know when I last updated you, but this is what the dress is looking like now. This isn't the most flattering lighting for it, but I'm really happy with it so far. I've done a fitting and I can get it on and it looks pretty cute. I think the ties are just adorable. I love the weight of the skirt and the volume of the skirt, and I think the placket is really sweet as well. So I'm very happy with this, and I thought it was done at this point, but it's not. It's actually having trouble closing at the side. You can kind of see a little peek of skin through when it's worn. So I'm going to add a hook and eye closure at the waist just to reinforce that and also to take less tension off of the button. I'm also going to add little shields to this region because even though the bodice is lined, it isn't fully opaque. I'd like to be able to wear this without a bra or corset or anything like that. So that's what I'm going to do now, and then I can go ahead and get this project photographed. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed filming this and I enjoyed making this dress. I didn't say this at the beginning, but you might have gotten the feel for this throughout the video, that this project was very much a procrastination project. I had a lot of other things going on. It was splitting my focus between a lot of things, and it just resulted in me not being able to focus on anything and get anything really substantial done. So I decided I would take a little break and take a couple days and make a very casual, fun little dress. And it really helped clear my head and make me more productive and focused moving forward with all of those projects. So this was just really an all-around great make for me personally. Before I go, I just want to give a huge thank you to all of my patrons. I really appreciate the support. And I want to give a special shout out to my $36 patrons. So thank you very much, Jordan Carpenter, Heidi Nizer, Jennifer Pingleton, Tabitha Langston, Steffi S, Bot Cosplay, Mo Quintana, Rachel Bishop, and Sharon Cyrith. I really appreciate the support from all of you guys. It means so much to me, and I really hope you enjoyed this video as well as all of the exclusive content that I've been posting over there. So thanks again to everyone for watching and supporting, and I will talk to all of you very soon.